Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world. Thank you for being here. I am honored. I so appreciate you being part of our and emotional eating masterclass. And I put this together for you because of my struggle that I had with emotional eating and being able to overcome it and lose 22 pounds and keep it off naturally. And I want that for you too. I want you to live healthy, happy, and confidently in your life as well. So I brought together 20 plus experts for you to hear their stories, strategies, tips, tricks, and techniques in hopes that you would find some inspiration, the one thing, the someone to help you move your healing forward. And today, I get to speak to Laura Heath. She's a registered pharmacist, college professor, integrative nutrition health coach, certified wellness life coach, and an advanced level Whole30 certified coach. Wow. She has a specialty in psychology of emotional eating, and after spending 20 years working as a hospital pharmacist, it became abundantly clear to her she needed to shift her focus and help provide her patients with the tools they needed to avoid getting sick in the first place, instead of just teaching them about their new medications, managing their side effects, and preventing serious drug interactions. Now, as the owner of Your Highest Self Coaching, Laura coaches women who identify as emotional eaters to help them heal their emotional relationships with food. She holds space for these women and gives them the tools they need to move forward into food freedom forever. How beautiful is that? Laura uses the power of Whole30 to teach her emotional eaters how to decrease the chatter around food and focus on their own self-worth. She truly believes that permanent change comes with learning how to love yourself fully. She says, I teach you how to change your thoughts, resulting in the ability to change how you feel. When you fuel your actions from a place of positivity, from a place of positive, believable thoughts, then you will take action that will drive the results you truly want. Laura has used the Whole30 as a powerful tool to help her coaching clients achieve success on their wellness journeys. When your food is aligned, then your whole health picture will start to shift. Nourishing your body with whole foods, changing your relationship with food, and changing your habits for good allows you to then take care of your mind, your body, and spirit. And don't we all deserve that kind of life? Yes, we do. Help me welcome Laura. Laura, welcome to the masterclass. I am so happy you're here. Thank you.
Thank you, Carrie. I'm excited to be here today.
Yeah. So I'm curious, you have all of these qualifications behind your name. I want to know how you got over let me start this again. It's too early. Tell us about you in your journey and how you overcame emotional eating. Then I want to hear about all your qualifications.
Okay, so we'll start with the emotional eating piece, which sort of ties into some of the qualifications because for anybody who has taken a look at my qualifications, by trade, I'm a hospital pharmacist. So that's what I've done for 22, 23 years. And as I was going through the journey of being a hospital pharmacist and finding myself in stressful situations, I worked a lot with really sick people, especially in the cancer clinics, and found myself in a place where, there was overtime, there were no breaks, there was no lunch. And I found the way that my mind was managing that was to take care of myself by eating food that I didn't need, food that I wasn't hungry for, and food that wasn't nourishing in any way. So I had this cycle happening where on the outside, I was like the healthcare provider doing all the good things and taking care of other people, but my own health was suffering. And I was not managing the emotions of, I work in a busy, stressful environment well. I'd come out at the end of my day later than I should have. And on autopilot drive to the grocery store, which was nice and close to the hospital. And I'd have a armamentarium of certain foods that would go on repeat, the wedge fries, the chocolate almonds, dark chocolate, because that's healthy. I would get chips and I would eat them all the way home, as many as I could. So I didn't have to share with my family. So other people didn't really need to see. And that cycle persisted for a while. And it wasn't really until I gave myself a little bit of space to think, is this how I want to live my life? Is this solving the problem of my emotions? Is this putting me in a place where I'm actually present with my kids? And that was the part where when I stood back and thought, am I actually with my kids, or am I up ruminating in my head over all the things that make me sad or angry or overwhelmed or upset? And so that kind of morphs into the decision to figure out how to do something different. And that's where some of the new qualifications came in. So to kind of go into your next question, the idea came to me, if I was going to help people in their wellness journeys, I needed to make sure I was well. And so I started some certification programs to become a health coach, a certified health coach, to become a certified life coach, and eventually to become a certified Whole30 coach. And Whole30 was part of the tools, along with health coaching and life coaching, that I used really to help myself in healing my own emotional relationship with food, so that I didn't think that chocolate almonds were the answer to my problems. Not that I couldn't have a chocolate almond if I wanted it, but that it wasn't going to solve for the emotion that I had going on in that given day. So I found myself in a place where I took a step back, kept that hospital pharmacy career a little bit, and moved into a place where I thought, now that I've got this figured out, now that I've got my own tools, I've worked through them myself, I think I know what my niche is in helping other people. And it's in the place that I struggled the whole time, this emotional eating and healing that emotional relationship with food, finding food freedom. And so I evolved into, part of the time, keeping that hospital work, and part of the time, more of the time as time goes on, working on coaching women in particular who identify as emotional eaters, to help them, first of all, heal that emotional relationship with food, to help them lose the excess weight if that's something that they desire, which many people do, but it's not a necessary piece of healing. And from there have really evolved into loving everything about the journey. And yeah, I still have emotions. That's the great part. You're allowed to have emotions. You're allowed to have negative emotions and positive emotions, and knowing how to experience them without using food to be the thing to solve them, which never solved them anyways, feels like, a great accomplishment, because I'm helping other people, I've helped myself, and that medical piece still remains. And I think in that journey, initially helping people who were sick and seeing people come into the hospital over and over for the same conditions, and recognizing that, gosh, if I could help them with some of their lifestyle pieces, maybe they wouldn't need these drugs at all. So then having that be part of my experience in coaching has been a kind of full circle, beautiful piece to add on, to see people come to me pre-diabetic with high blood pressure and with this emotional eating piece, and go out the other side of coaching with half the drugs that they were on, control of their diabetes, and peace around food. So it's been a great journey.
Wow, that's amazing. So how did you transition from being a hospital pharmacist into health and life coach? What did that look like? I'm
Yeah.
transitioning from massage therapist to transitional coach or transformational coach. So I'm curious, how did you make that?
Yeah, I
Excite
sort of liken it to like you're on a trapeze and you have to let go of the trapeze and fly to the next bar and trust that you're going to catch the bar. So it took a leap of faith. It took working through some fear, because everything was safe. It was cushy, it was familiar, but sometimes the biggest breakthroughs that can happen are when you allow yourself a little bit of discomfort. And so I just said, bring it, bring on the discomfort, because I'm already sitting in discomfort anyways, and it's actually not very pleasant. So let me jump, let me catch the next rung on that ladder. Let me fly and see what happens, with the belief that this is the right thing for me because it's exactly what I'm doing. What I'm doing is exactly what I should be doing. And so that was about 3 years ago. And I've just continued to evolve, kept that hospital work, found a position that allowed me flexibility to work a little bit, to keep those skills, to keep my license, to do that work that I trained my entire, young adult years to do, but then to have most of my time be filled up with something that is really filling me up. And so the transition was hard, but easy. Hard because I had to take a leap of faith and risk whatever might come with the potential for failure, but easy because it was the right thing and I just had to do it.
I love it. I love it. So tell us about Whole30. I have not heard about Whole30 before. What
Yeah.
what is Whole30 and how do you use that?
Yeah, I kind of alluded to Whole30 as being part of my journey, which is why I went on to become a certified Whole30 coach. And actually this year I have been designated as an advanced level Whole30 coach. So there's a process that you go through to apply and get considered for an advanced level status, which has happened this year and is very exciting to me. But Whole30, I think first and foremost, needs to be understood that it's not a diet. Because I think in the emotional eating landscape, everyone is looking for the next diet, something that if I can get the weight off, then I'll just feel better about myself. I need to deal with the food. I need to deal with the size of my body. I need to deal with how much I don't like myself. And then my emotional eating will stop. That's not what Whole30 is, because I think some people do perceive it as a diet. If you look at the culture of Whole30, that is 100% not what it's intending to do. It's actually an elimination program. So it's a program where you decide for 30 days, I'm going to eat these whole real foods designated by Whole30. That eliminates foods like grains, in fact, legumes, dairy, alcohol, and added sugar. And that might sound restrictive, but it's not with the intent to stay off of those foods forever. It's almost like I'm going to do this experiment on myself. I'm going to commit to 30 days of, in particular, no flour, no sugar, along with these other food allergens that a lot of people have issues with in terms of their emotional relationship with food, their physical symptoms, the diseases that they have, the inflammation in their body. And I'm going to test out what it would feel like to take them out for 30 days and then systematically reintroduce them at the end of 30 days. So that doesn't mean on day 31, there's a free for all and I go back and eat everything in sight. And it also doesn't mean, oh my gosh, I feel so good and I've lost weight, so I'm going to do this Whole30 diet for the rest of my life. It's very much an opportunity to figure out, well, what is food freedom for me? What foods do serve me? And the only way to do that is to actually test it on you. So for 30 days, I did a Whole30 myself and actually did that again a few years later. I was familiar with it already, to recognize that, you know what, there are certain foods that just don't really mesh with me feeling good. And so now that I know that, I get to decide on the other side what to do with those. For emotional eaters, flour and sugar are the biggest ones that come up. Keeping that over desire really high, that desire for more food, is really fueled by flour and sugar. And as my clients go into that program and take those foods out for 30 days, they see the desire come down and they have the opportunity to go, okay, what's actually in my brain? What is it that I'm thinking that is leading me to take these actions to eat these foods that I don't want to take? So even though Whole30 is about food, really it's not, because keeping that food out for 30 days allows you to be with you, to open up to, what am I thinking? How is it making me feel? What actions have those thoughts and feelings been driving that have gotten me the results that I don't want? Wow, now that I have this insight, I can do something to change it on the other side. I can make a decision about whether to put back food A, B, and C as I do this reintroduction. Does my gut symptoms flare? Does my diarrhea come back? Does my acne come back? Does my emotional brain go crazy as I put some of these foods back? Great, now I have information. Now I can craft my own food freedom plan. I can know that for the most part, me, Laura, doesn't eat sugar and flour. That doesn't mean I can't. That doesn't mean I won't ever again. But I know most of the time for me, it's just not worth it. I did this experiment on myself called Whole30. And on the other side, I went, yeah, I can plan for cake on my birthday. I can plan for a glass of wine on Friday night. I can have whatever I want. But I choose most of the time to eat the foods that I figured out during Whole30 are the ones that actually serve me from a mental capacity, from a physical capacity as well. If that makes sense to you.
Yeah, so almost like a detox
Yeah.
from flour and sugar
Mhm.
with the food. And then also while you're doing the 30 days, detoxing from those foods and the effect they have on you, working on the mindset and the thoughts as your brain clears up.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, for Whole30 in general, the program itself doesn't promote take these foods out and then work on your brain necessarily. I
No,
mean,
but
that's
as a coach.
that's the piece that I bring to my Whole30 coaching is knowing that I attract and work with emotional eaters. Let's do the experiment of Whole30. Let's follow the rules. Let's commit to this difficult, challenging program for 30 days with the intent of being with me, with the intent of temporary discomfort, because I'm already sitting in permanent discomfort anyways, for the potential for some freedom on the other side. Not that I'm never going to feel a negative emotion again, but that I'll know how to manage it, know how to recognize it, maybe know how to sit with it, know how to change it if that's what is best for me in those scenarios. But when I'm stuffing down food at every corner, when I'm using food to buffer, to block, to neutralize, without the program of Whole30, I don't ever get to dig into, well, what's going on behind it? You know, many people will come to all of us, right, and say, I have no idea why I do what I do. So having that commitment of removing flour and sugar in particular, but the following the rules of Whole30 for 30 days gives you the opportunity to go, oh, I actually do know what's behind it. And our lives evolve, our circumstances evolve. At various times in my life since making that decision to evolve into a Whole30 coach and a life coach and a health coach, I've had other circumstances come up where my brain has offered me the idea that ice cream would fix this. You know what? I think a couple donuts would make this better. And now I have the tools to go, oh, there's something going on here. Let me find my pause. Let me dig into my own brain with the tools that I now have, this toolbox that I carry around to figure out what it is poor Laura really needs. Like compassionately talk to me and figure out what's going on for you. Like
Absolutely.
kindly have that conversation with me, which I most certainly never did before. It was like, get your stuff together. Why can't you figure this out? You're such a failure. That negative self-talk never got the result that I wanted. So now I have those tools, starting with Whole30 and then the mindset and really the cognitive brain work that goes with figuring out what's behind this. How am I thinking? Do I want to change the way I'm thinking? I can't change the circumstance. Normally, I can't change what's going on around me, but I can change my response to it. And sometimes
Absolutely.
the response is absolutely normal. It's okay that it's a negative emotion that comes up. So then the tools are, how do I sit with that instead of eat it?
Exactly. Having the awareness, building the awareness muscle of
Mhm.
how am I reacting in situations and in my environment to certain people. You know, we have habits of how we react in everything else.
Yeah,
And, you know, if I'm stressed at work and I'm realizing I'm stressed, instead of reaching for whatever it was you're reaching for, what can I do instead?
right.
That
Right.
having that awareness.
Yeah. And once you have that awareness, there's so much that you can do with that because there's the what can I do instead piece, right? And maybe sometimes what you need to do is a walk, a phone call, a meditation, some quiet time, a conversation with a friend. I mean, there's a million things that might come with the doing, but then there's also the processing, you know, the thinking about, you know, starting with often, is this true? Like this thought that I have as I leave work that's on repeat every night at 4:01 p.m. Is it true? Like,
Exactly.
do I want to believe this thing that's giving me the emotions that I don't like and the ultimate results that I don't want? And sometimes when we've held a belief for a long, long, long time, we don't even know that it is what's holding us back and that perhaps it's just a thought in our head, not that it's an actual fact. We think it's a fact,
And
right?
I spoke to another expert a couple days ago about the thoughts in our head. Just because we have those thoughts doesn't mean they're true.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
I think most people believe their thoughts are true.
Yes.
I can't control my thoughts, so therefore my thoughts dictate what I do,
Mm-hmm.
which is so the wrong way.
Yeah. Well, and
Once
even if you go back to that example of me working in the busy cancer clinic, I had colleagues who did the same job as me, but they didn't have the same thoughts as me. They didn't go home and eat all the way home. Their way of thinking about the busy cancer clinic was different than mine, which means that each of us have the opportunity to think differently about the same situation. They were in the exact same circumstance as me. They sometimes didn't get their lunch. They often had overtime. They worked through their breaks. But the way that they perceived that environment was in their own mind different than mine. So when I recognized that too and went, well, my colleague doesn't do what I do or think what I think or feel what I think, like what's going on? Could it actually be that my thought that this is a terrible place to work and I can't stand it is actually wrong? No, it's a terrible place to work. And then I went, but it's not. Like, that's just what I've come to believe. It's my story that I'm telling myself. And sometimes it's hard to coach yourself through that on your own. So that's why once I had those coaching tools and could do some of that self-reflecting, some journaling, some really figuring out, well, what's behind this? Oh, it's this belief that I'm in a terrible environment and my life is terrible because of everything else that everyone does to me. When I recognize that's just my story and it's not actually true, it's first of all a little bit humbling, but then freeing, right? Because you're like, well, I can change the narrative. I can totally change the story. And
absolutely.
that takes time, that takes empathy, that takes practice. It maybe takes a laddering of thoughts. You might not go from this is the worst place and they treat me terribly to I love my job and I'm going to stay here for the rest of my life. But there is an opportunity to evolve to something a little more neutral, at least.
Exactly. Sometimes I tell my clients, you're the pickle in the jar. You can't see the label on the outside of the jar. And that's
Mhm.
what we're here for.
Yeah, yeah,
And,
for
and
sure.
we're not here to change you. We're just here to guide you
Yeah,
into seeing a different perspective about yourself so that your environment changes.
that's right.
Yeah.
Yeah, 100%.
And I love the latter analogy. You change the thought, one rung at a time
Yeah,
to get to the thought that you believe that changes the perspective about the environment you're in
that's right.
or about yourself.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
sometimes it's really easy to make that shift. Sometimes you don't need to ladder. Sometimes when you hear what's in your head, you can discount it really quickly. Like, wow, Laura, that's a crazy thought. That is just not true. You know what? I can totally dump that thought right now. Other times you're like, no, I can't leave that thought behind. I'm going to have to work on how to edit this thought. Perhaps there's going to have to be some laddering in this case versus this case, depending on what the belief is. If it's a belief you've held for your entire life, maybe part of your identity growing up in a family where your parent told you something, so you 100% believe it, it's going to take some work to change that belief. A really simple one to give an example of is you have to clean up your plate. You have to eat everything on your plate. You must finish all the food. That could have been ingrained in you from the time you were 2 years old, because that's what your family said. Maybe you had to sit at the table and eat all the food until it was gone. And so now that thought has stayed with you, maybe even evolved to, if I don't finish that food, then the people who don't have enough food in the world are somehow impacted by my not finishing the food. I need to eat all the food. This is true. Well, when you stand back and think about it, is it true? Is it true that you have to eat all the food on your plate or else other people in the world will be hungry? Is it true that you have to eat all the food on your plate or else some bad consequences going to happen to you? Or could it be possible that you only need to eat enough food on the plate to have you feel satisfied? Is that possible? And when you open up to a different way of looking at something that you have believed for your whole life, it can take a little bit of time to move from, oh no, I'm a member of the clean plate club, to actually, if I have to compost it, I do. I am not saving anybody in another country or any of my neighbors by eating more food than my body needs. In fact, I'm just putting it on my waste instead of wasting it.
Oh,
What if I just
nice.
put food back in the fridge? Like, what if I just ate it tomorrow? It's still going to be there for me. I don't have to waste it at all. I can just eat it tomorrow or
You
the
know,
next time I'm hungry.
right? I love that. And I laugh because, our parents would tell us, there's starving kids in Africa. You need to eat your food. Well, if I don't eat my food, how are they going to get my food if they're in
Indeed.
Africa?
Yeah.
How is that going to save anybody if I eat all my food on my plate?
Right. It's a great example. Once you challenge it, you're like, oh, yeah, you're right. That is not true. It's just not true.
Exactly.
But I believed it forever. So I thought it was true. But it's,
Right?
kind of mind blowing to go, well, then that could change everything about my actions around finishing my plate. Like once I recognize that it's not true, I can believe something different. And
Absolutely.
that can change everything if that's one of your limiting beliefs that you're holding on to.
Yes. And it's asking better questions,
Yes.
challenging the thoughts in your head. Like you said, is this really true?
Mhm.
How is this true? It just, yeah. I laugh because their parents, bless their hearts because they learned it from their parents and so on and so on. But in an attempt to get you to do what they want you to do, tell you these little white lies that you end up believing that cost you down the road.
Right. Yeah.
You know,
Coming back to Whole30 and this idea of portions, Whole30 doesn't have portions per se. You can eat what you want. You can eat when you're hungry. You stop when you're satisfied. It's not about measuring or counting or points or macros or any of those things. It's just eating whole real food. And then at the end, reintroducing those foods that perhaps are problematic, knowing that certain foods are more problematic for others, and making that assessment on the other side. So again, back to that idea of, the clean plate club, there's nothing about Whole30 that says you have to eat this much or you have to eat this little. It's just eat these foods, eat to the point of satisfied, which I love about it as well, because that diet mentality doesn't get us anywhere. If we're always stopping before we're actually satisfied, or if we're using some external source to tell us how much or when we can eat, we'll never learn to trust that our own bodies innately have the gift of knowing this information without some external source guiding us, which is hard to believe for some people who have always been on a diet where some external source is telling them what to do. Like, again, another belief that perhaps gets to be busted as you go through your journey towards healing your emotional relationship with food, that perhaps the diet doesn't know best. Like, what if you actually knew best? And again, for some people, that's a mind-blowing thought, that I would know best, because their thought is, I cannot trust myself. I would never be able to trust myself. I have to use some external source to tell me what to do. To which I would say to them, is that true?
exactly.
Mhm.
Trusting your body's innate knowing that it knows best, you know best for what's for you, versus some program diet that is trying to fit your round peg into their square hole.
100%. Right.
Yeah, exactly.
Which for Whole30 is another reason why I do love it, because this is an experiment. It's not you have to do these things for the rest of your life or else you're going to be a certain size or have a certain result. It's, let's be curious about your innate body signals. What happens when you put black beans back? You feel great? Good. Eat them again. What happens when you put dairy back? Oh, you're in the bathroom immediately afterward? Something to consider as you reintroduce these foods. What happens when you put sugar back? Your sugar dragon, as we call it in Whole30, goes crazy, and your desire is so high that you're thinking about the next hit of sugar and the next hit of sugar and the next hit of sugar. Is that worth it for you? And for you, you get to decide that. Is that worth it? Was the taste of whatever that thing worth it for the consequence of being in turmoil for the next hours, days, weeks afterward? And you innately know the answer to that.
Exactly. Getting to know yourself and your body and what it wants and needs versus what your unconscious mind thinks you need.
Yes. Yeah, for sure. Because yeah, the unconscious mind too might go with, well, I have to have broiled chicken and steamed broccoli because otherwise I'm never going to get to my goal. And that is not you talking. Maybe broiled chicken and steamed broccoli is a great option for you, but maybe it's not. And maybe it is sometimes, but not every time. So trusting, yeah, I tolerate these foods. I feel good with these foods, but I don't have to have anything. I choose my menu. I choose the foods that make me feel good. And that is freeing. That is not going by any external source. And there's a lot of freedom that comes with you figuring out what you're going to eat. Like trusting in your own innate ability to decide what is on your plate and what isn't is very freeing.
Absolutely. So what does it look like going through a coaching program with you other than the Whole30? What else do you take your clients through? I'm curious.
So we do Whole30 as a group. I do Food Freedom as a group, which is like the kind of the graduation program from excuse me, from Whole30. And I do one-on-one coaching programs. So there are some people who maybe decide to do that on the other side of Whole30. There are some people who right off the bat know, I need one-on-one attention. I don't want to be in a group. I don't want to talk to other people about their issues and or problems. I need to figure this out for me. And so the one-on-one piece is, that intensive coaching where you and I are going to look at what's going on for you. And that may or may not include Whole30. For some people, depending on their background story, Whole30 may really truly feel like an impossibility, like they don't want to do it, which is fine. So you can do the same work with somebody without running the Whole30 program. Perhaps there's a decision along the way in coaching to pull out flour and sugar and to make an assessment of how your body feels without those things. Because as we know, for the most part, we're not going to overeat black beans to the point of feeling unwell as an emotional eating tool. We're probably not going to overeat yogurt as an emotional eating food. So the foods that we tend to do that with are foods that are high dopamine response foods, flour and sugar. So when I work with somebody one-on-one over a series of 12 one-hour sessions, we really dig into figuring out what are those limiting beliefs? What am I thinking that's driving this behavior that I don't want to do? How do I manage myself when I sabotage? Because I'm going to slip up. And what if I found a way to slip up and go, you're okay. That is okay. And finding a way to be compassionate with myself while still working forward, falling forward, failing forward, and knowing that you don't have to beat yourself up every time there is some sort of slip up. To look at the other things going on in your life as you do some things with food, whether it's take out flour and sugar, what does improve? Almost like that mini experiment that comes with Whole30. And so I think with the one-on-one coaching, it's more, intensive in terms of your personal story and figuring out on a week-to-week basis, looking at the food that you're eating as a way to dig into what's behind that food journal that you present to me. What's behind this day where you clearly ate more food than your body needed, clearly ate foods that you didn't intend to. Let's dig into what the thoughts are behind that, because sometimes people will say, I don't know, right? I don't know why I did what I did. I don't know why I sabotage myself. So with coaching, you can get to the bottom of, I don't know. And you do actually know, and having someone to guide and coach you can help you figure that out. Once you have that awareness, as you said before, then you can do something about it, whether it's change the way you think or whether it's perhaps allow yourself to feel some emotion that you are pushing away and suppressing on a regular basis. So there are a multitude of ways to work with me, whether it's a Whole30 program, the next one coming up in early September, or whether it's a one-on-one kind of intensive where we dig into your personal story, your food that you're eating, and your own journey towards kind of coming out to food freedom on the other side, with or without Whole30, if that kind of gives you a sense. I mean, I do other work too. I do work with corporations sometimes. I have some smaller programs like a sugar detox and so on. But really, the big things that I work with are the one-on-one, which I must say often comes after Whole30 for a lot of people. So they do Whole30, they do food freedom, they've got the food figured out, but they know that they haven't quite dug into all the stuff, the backpack that I call it, that they're carrying around. And they want to dig into that. They're ready to have that little bit more privacy to dig into what is it that I still have on repeat come up for me as my loop that hasn't quite gotten figured out yet. And so we dig into that.
Beautiful. I love it. Laura, thank you for sharing all those nuggets of gold and wisdom and um, yeah, this was amazing. I loved it. Can you please share with our viewers your free gift for them?
Yeah, I do. I have a couple of things, Carrie. One is that I'm doing a couple of webinars coming up in August. So I'll give you the links to those. And they are kind of like an introduction to what is Whole30. How would I successfully complete a Whole30 as an emotional eater? I have a webinar on that. And I believe that August 18th at 6 p.m. Eastern is when that's running. I have another webinar for anyone who's familiar with Whole30 and has tried it and failed. And that is, why do I sabotage my Whole30 and how can I stop doing that? That could apply to not just Whole30, but whatever it is that you're trying to do in terms of healing your emotional relationship with food. Why do I sabotage this journey and how do I stop doing it? So again, on August 18th, that's running at 7:30 p.m., I believe. So I'll give you the link. Those are free. I also have an ebook that I'm going to give you a link for, and that is a Crush Your Cravings ebook. So really just a booklet for you to take and work through around, how do I manage these cravings that feel so intense? Like in the moment, I think there's no way I could possibly ever not eat the food. Or if I do, I'm just gritting my teeth and trying to use willpower to get there, which maybe sometimes works, but most of the time, it doesn't keep working. It's a limited resource. There's only so much willpower in our willpower bank, and we need to have other tools that can work to help us see that desire is there, but not have the action of eating the food, and eventually find ways to decrease the desire. So the crushing of your cravings is that, like, it doesn't happen as often. Even for me, it doesn't happen nearly as often, but it still happens. So decrease the number of cravings, but then know how to manage them when they do happen. So that's called Crush Your Cravings. So I will be showing that as well.
Beautiful. Thank you so much. Excuse me. Where can our viewers find you? How can they connect with
So
you?
yeah, thanks. So I am on Instagram at your_highest_coaching, or your highest self coaching with underscores between each of these. I'm on Facebook as well at Your Highest Self Coaching. My website is yourhighestself.ca. And I'm happy for people to reach out to me by email too, Laura at yourhighestself.ca. And of course, the free webinars are a good chance to see me face to face, because I'll be on Zoom just like this. It'll be recorded. And you know what? If anyone is curious about Whole30, I'm happy to talk to them about it. It's not for everybody, but if you're uncertain, one of those webinars would probably really help you figure out, is that the thing for me? And I'm happy for you to kind of find me and get to really know me through one of those free webinars that's coming up soon.
Perfect. Thank you so much for your generosity and offering those things to our viewers. Thank you for your time today. This has been amazing. I have learned so much.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Yes,
Have a good day.
you too. What did you learn? What was your ahas? What are your takeaways? I learned a lot. I have never heard Whole30 before. That was amazing. I love the fact that you get to be curious about the foods you eat and how they react with you in your body, and detoxing from certain foods and then reintroducing them to see how your body reacts. Perfect. I love it. Jump in the Facebook group, share your stuff, share your ahas, your takeaways. What was the one thing for you that was a light bulb moment? I want to hear. Share with us all, because maybe it will help somebody else. If you're not on social media, you're not in the Facebook group, please reply to the email that you got this video in and share with me. I want to hear, please. As always, stay true to you. Have a great day. We'll see you in the next interview. Bye.